She walked away from her own parents, abandoned her little sister, and stole every dollar she could. All because she thought money made her better than us. But karma? Oh, karma found her in a way she never saw coming. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lily Carter, and for a long time I believed my older sister, Emily, was the kind of person everyone admired. She was confident, good in school, and always dreamed big. Our parents adored her, and I grew up thinking she was someone I should follow. But as soon as she met a man named Victor Hale, everything about her started changing. It didn't happen overnight. At first she just seemed busy, then distant, and then it felt like she had stepped out of our family completely. The Emily I knew used to laugh at our small-town life in a teasing, harmless way. After Victor, she started calling it pathetic. She didn't visit home unless she wanted something. She acted like every choice we made was wrong, like she had somehow unlocked a better world and we didn't deserve to be part of it. At first, we thought she was just excited about her new life, but excitement doesn't make you cold. Excitement doesn't make you cruel. I still remember the day my father tried to ask her why she never came home. She rolled her eyes and said she didn't want to waste time around people who wanted nothing out of life. That sentence broke something inside my mother. She tried to hide it, but I saw it, saw the way she held her breath, trying not to cry until Emily left the room. It kept getting worse. Emily stopped answering calls. Stopped replying to messages. Every time we reached out, it felt like she pushed us farther away. Eventually she didn't even bother pretending she cared. If she needed money, she called. If she didn't, we didn't exist. I tried to understand her, tried to believe she was just confused or overwhelmed, but deep down I knew she had made her choice. She wanted a life where family didn't matter unless it benefited her. She wanted to look down on us from her new expensive world. And each time she made another selfish decision, it felt like she was cutting one more thread that tied us together. I watched my parents try to hold on. They defended her even when she wasn't there to defend them. They kept saying she would come around, that she was just going through a phase. But phases don't drain bank accounts. Phases don't leave your father staring at bills he shouldn't have to pay. Phases don't leave a family wondering how their own child could walk away so easily. I didn't know it then, but the distance she created wasn't just emotional. She was about to do something that would change our lives forever, something that would shatter every last bit of trust we still had left. And when it happened, karma was already waiting right behind her. It didn't take long before the first signs showed that something was seriously wrong. Emily suddenly began calling our parents more often, but not to check on them or ask how they were doing. Every call was about money. She said she had investment opportunities that would triple whatever they gave her. She talked fast, using big words she never used before, making it sound like she knew exactly what she was doing. My parents didn't understand much about investments, but they trusted her. She was their oldest daughter. They believed she would never take advantage of them. At first, they gave her small amounts. Then she asked for more. Each time she had a new excuse: the market is moving, this is time sensitive, I can't let this chance slip. She always made it sound urgent. My parents began pulling money from their savings, convinced they were helping her build a strong future. They didn't see the pattern forming, but I did. Emily stopped visiting home completely unless she needed something. If she wasn't asking for money, we didn't hear from her for weeks. When she did show up, she acted like she was doing us a favor by coming. She walked around the house like everything was below her, like she didn't belong there anymore. She barely sat with Mom, barely talked to Dad. But the moment money came up, she was suddenly warm, smiling, acting like she cared. It felt fake, and it hurt to watch my parents fall for it every time. The worst part came when she started pushing Dad to sign over parts of his construction business. She claimed it would secure better financial growth and open doors to partnerships. Dad didn't understand any of that, but Emily made him feel like he was holding the family back by refusing. She said Victor knew people who could take the business to the next level, and without her signature, those doors would close. I tried talking to Dad privately. I told him that Emily didn't care about the business, that she didn't even visit when he was sick last year. But he kept defending her. He said she was ambitious, that she just wanted to help, that I was being jealous. Those words cut deep, not because I was jealous, but because he couldn't see what she was doing to him. Emily wasn't helping, she was slowly taking control of everything he had built with his own hands. The tension in the house grew every time Emily walked in. Mom tried to stay hopeful, but even she started noticing the way Emily only talked about money. The warmth she once had was gone. She didn't care about family dinners, didn't ask about anyone's life, didn't even look around at the home she grew up in. Her eyes were always on documents, numbers, and the next thing she wanted. Little by little, her greed became impossible to deny. And even though I didn't know how far she would go, I could feel it, something bigger was coming. Something that would hit the family harder than anything before. It didn't take long before Emily pushed things further. After weeks of convincing, she managed to get Dad to hand over access to his business accounts. She spoke to him like she was the only one who understood how money worked, telling him he needed to modernize if he wanted to stay ahead. Dad wanted to believe she was helping, so he signed the papers she brought. He didn't realize he had just given her control over almost everything. Once she had access, the changes were fast. The company savings that Dad had built over years began disappearing. At first, he thought it was normal business flow. But within months, there wasn't enough money left to pay his workers on time. Dad tried to hide it, tried to pretend it was just a slow season, but I could see the stress on his face every morning. He kept checking the accounts, hoping the missing funds would somehow return on their own. They never did. Mom was the first to confront Emily. She asked her to slow down, to explain where the money was going, to think about the workers depending on Dad's business. Mom wasn't angry, she was scared. But Emily didn't care. She rolled her eyes and told Mom she was done wasting her life on broke people. She said it in a cold, sharp voice that didn't sound like the sister I grew up with. The words hit Mom so hard she couldn't even answer. She just stood there, stunned, like someone had punched the air out of her. That moment changed everything. Emily didn't wait for anyone to respond. She grabbed her things, announced she had better places to be, and walked out like we meant nothing. After that day, she didn't just distance herself, she erased us. She changed her phone number without telling anyone. She blocked me everywhere. She stopped showing up completely. It was like she had cut a line with a knife and never looked back. Dad tried to call her several times from different numbers, hoping she would pick up just once. She never did. Mom wrote her long messages, begging her to talk, asking what had gone wrong. None were read. None were answered. It was clear Emily didn't just leave, she wanted nothing to do with the family anymore. Watching my parents fall apart was the hardest part. Dad went quiet. He stopped talking about his business because every reminder hurt. He sat at the kitchen table late at night, staring at the bills and the empty account statements. Mom cried in the laundry room where she thought no one would hear her. They both looked older within weeks, like Emily had drained the life out of them just as easily as she drained the business. I tried to be strong for them, but inside I felt the same pain, like someone had torn a piece out of our family. Emily wasn't just gone, she had chosen to forget us. And the damage she left behind was something we didn't know how to fix. The stress didn't just sit on Dad's shoulders, it crushed him slowly, day by day, until his body finally gave out. One morning, while getting ready for work, he grabbed his chest and collapsed on the kitchen floor. Mom screamed his name so loudly the neighbors came running. I rushed home from my shift the moment she called, and when I saw him lying there, pale and struggling to breathe, a fear I'd never felt before hit me like a punch to the stomach. The doctors said it was a severe stress-related collapse. His heart had been under too much pressure for too long. They kept him in the hospital for days, running tests and adjusting medications. Each hour felt heavier than the last. The bills started stacking up faster than I could keep track of them. Insurance only covered part of the cost, and everything else came out of pocket. Mom kept apologizing like it was her fault, even though none of this was on her. I picked up every extra shift I could find. Double shifts, overnight shifts, anything that paid. I barely slept, barely ate, but quitting wasn't an option. We needed the money, and Dad needed someone to keep him from losing hope. I visited him between shifts and held his hand while he apologized again and again for trusting Emily. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight she put on him had taken something out of him permanently. Meanwhile, Emily was living a life that didn't match the damage she left behind. Pictures of her leaked through friends of friends, her at expensive resorts, at high-end restaurants, wearing clothes that cost more than Dad made in a week. She posed beside luxury cars, laughing like she had not a single worry in the world. She stood on the balcony of a penthouse with Victor, drinking champagne while my family struggled to keep Dad alive. She didn't call. She didn't ask. She didn't even check if Dad was okay. Seeing her live like that while we fought to stay afloat made something inside me snap. It wasn't just that she abandoned us. It wasn't just that she drained the business. It was the realization that she had planned it. She wanted the money, and she didn't care who she hurt to get it. She didn't just walk away from the family, she pushed us down and kept walking. Standing beside Dad's hospital bed one night, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to let her destroy us completely. She had taken enough. She had taken more than any sister ever should. But she wasn't going to take the last piece of hope we had left. I vowed to protect my parents with everything I had. I vowed to rebuild Dad's business, no matter how long it took or how hard it would be. If Emily wanted to throw us away for money, then fine. But I wasn't going to let her be the reason my parents lost everything. I wasn't going to let her win. Karma didn't take long to show up, and when it did, it hit Emily harder than she ever expected. It started with Victor disappearing out of nowhere. One day he was posting pictures of expensive dinners and late-night parties, and the next day he was gone. No warning, no goodbye, no explanation. Emily tried calling him, but every call went straight to voicemail. At first she thought he was ignoring her, but then she realized something was seriously wrong when she couldn't access her own money. Her bank accounts were frozen without any notice. Every credit card she tried got declined. Payments bounced. Bills stacked up. She went from feeling untouchable to standing in her fancy kitchen with nothing she could control. The panic hit her hard. She called the bank, but they wouldn't give her details. All they said was that there was an ongoing investigation connected to Victor Hale. Within days, everything came crashing down. Victor wasn't just a wealthy businessman, he was involved in illegal financial schemes, and he had used Emily to cover his tracks. All the documents she had signed, the papers she skimmed through without reading, were now tied to her name. Instead of being Victor's partner, she had become his shield. Her signature was on things she didn't even remember seeing. And because of that, the investigators turned straight to her. The authorities seized assets under her name, including the penthouse she bragged about. Her car was taken next. She went from luxury rides to taxis she could barely afford. Reporters started showing up outside the building, shouting her name, asking if she knew she was involved in fraud. She tried to push through them, but they kept following her, cameras flashing in her face, microphones in her hands. She couldn't step outside without someone recording her humiliation. Lawyers showed up too, not to defend her, but to question her. They wanted documents, statements, details about Victor. She tried to explain she didn't know anything, but ignorance didn't erase her signature from the papers. She had made herself part of his schemes, even if she hadn't meant to. Her friends started distancing themselves. People she once bragged about stopped taking her calls. She became a target, not someone to admire. Every door that once opened for her now slammed shut. Every place she walked into felt colder. She had gone from living above everyone to being watched like a criminal. And then, when her world was falling apart, when she felt the ground slipping from beneath her feet, she finally reached for the family she threw away. She started calling me, over and over. Her voice sounded different in the voicemails, shaky, scared, desperate. She begged me to call back, said she didn't know who else to turn to, said she needed help. But every time my phone lit up with her name, I remembered Dad collapsing, Mom crying alone, and the nights I worked until my body felt numb. I remembered the way she called us broke people and walked away without a second thought. So I let the phone ring. I let her voicemail fill up. I chose silence, not because I wanted revenge, but because she had made her choice long before karma caught up to her. A few weeks after her calls went unanswered, Emily showed up at our childhood home without warning. It was a Sunday afternoon, quiet and calm, and Mom was folding laundry when we heard a soft knock at the door. At first, I thought it was a neighbor. But when I opened it, I froze. Emily was standing there, but she didn't look like the person we once knew. She looked worn out, thinner than before, her eyes tired and hollow. The expensive confidence she used to carry was gone. Instead, she stood there shivering slightly, holding a small bag like it was all she had left. She didn't say hello. She didn't even try to pretend things were normal. The moment she saw me, her face crumpled, and she broke into tears. Not the dramatic kind she used to do to get her way, these were the shaky, painful kind that come from someone who has hit the bottom. She kept saying she had nowhere else to go, that everything in her life had fallen apart, that she didn't know what to do. Her voice kept cracking, and for a second, I saw the sister she used to be, buried under everything she had done. Mom came running when she heard her crying. The moment she saw Emily, her whole face changed. She wanted to hug her so badly, but she didn't know if she should. Years of hurt stood between them, but a mother's instinct doesn't disappear so easily. She reached out slowly, like she was scared Emily might disappear if she moved too fast. Emily leaned into her, sobbing harder, mumbling apologies we could barely understand. Dad, however, didn't move from his seat at the table. He looked at her once, then looked away like the sight of her hurt more than he could admit. He didn't shout or say anything cruel. He just refused to speak. The man who used to brag about his daughters now sat there with a wall around his heart, trying to protect whatever piece of himself he had left. Seeing him that quiet was worse than anger. It told me just how deeply she had broken him. Emily kept wiping her face, saying she didn't have money, didn't have a home, didn't have a single friend who would take her in. She said she wasn't proud of what she had become, that she made mistakes, that she wished she could take everything back. Her voice shook every time she mentioned Dad, but he kept staring at the table, refusing to look at her. I stayed quiet, leaning against the doorframe, watching everything unfold. Part of me felt sorry for her. Another part remembered the hospital bills, the late-night shifts, the nights Mom cried herself to sleep. I didn't know what to think. Emily was my sister, but she had caused damage that couldn't be erased with tears. As she stood there, trembling and lost, I knew this moment would decide everything. Whether we let her back in, whether we protected ourselves from her, whether forgiveness was even possible. I didn't say a word. I just watched, trying to figure out whether helping her would heal the family, or break it all over again. Emily stayed with us that evening, sitting quietly on the edge of the couch like she was scared to take up space. Mom brought her water, Dad stayed in the other room, and the whole house felt heavy with things no one wanted to say. I watched her closely, trying to understand what she truly wanted. After hours of silence and small broken sentences, I realized something: if I didn't speak now, nothing would ever change. So I asked her to follow me to the porch. The moment the door closed behind us, the words that had been building inside me for years finally came out. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just told her everything, one thing after another. I reminded her how she stole money from our parents, how she drained Dad's business accounts without caring what it would do to him. I told her how she abandoned Mom when she needed her most, how she disappeared without thinking what it would do to the family. I reminded her of her words, how she called us broke people, how she acted like we were nothing to her. I told her about the nights Dad stayed awake staring at bills he shouldn't have had to face alone. How Mom cried silently because she didn't want anyone to hear. I told her she didn't just hurt them, she broke their hearts piece by piece, and she did it with a smile, thinking she was better than everyone. Every word I said came from years of holding it in. Emily didn't look at me at first. She kept staring at the floor, her hands shaking, her breath uneven. But the moment I finished, she finally lifted her head. Her eyes were full of tears, not the fake ones she used to get her way, but the kind that came from facing the truth. Her voice cracked as she admitted everything. She said Victor made her believe she could have a life where she never had to worry about anything again. She said he promised her success, comfort, luxury, everything she thought she deserved. Then she admitted the part that cut the deepest: she didn't just fall for Victor, she fell for her own greed. She signed whatever he put in front of her, believing she was untouchable. She didn't care about what she was losing because she thought she was gaining something better. But instead, he drained her accounts, used her name, left her drowning in debts she didn't know how to escape. Her voice broke when she whispered, "I just wanted a better life, Lily. I didn't want to feel small anymore." I let her finish crying, but I didn't let her words soften what needed to be said. I told her that wanting a better life wasn't the problem, everyone wants that. But a better life doesn't mean destroying the people who raised you. A better life isn't real if you have to step over your own family to get there. I told her she didn't lose everything because she wanted more, she lost everything because she forgot who she was and where she came from. Emily kept nodding, wiping her face over and over, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. For the first time, she wasn't arguing, wasn't pretending, wasn't blaming anyone else. She was finally facing the wreckage she created. And in that moment, I understood something: confrontation wasn't about hurting her. It was about showing her the truth she had been running from. Whether she changed after this or not was up to her. But at least now, she couldn't hide from the damage she left behind. The family sat together in the living room, the air heavy with silence. Everyone knew this conversation was going to be difficult, but it had to happen. Emily sat on the edge of the couch, her hands shaking, her eyes red from crying. She looked small, almost fragile, but the damage she had caused was still fresh in everyone's mind. Her father kept his arms crossed, staring at the floor. He had always been a calm man, but today his face showed a mixture of disappointment and exhaustion. He didn't raise his voice, but his words were firm. He said he couldn't allow Emily to live with them again. The trust she had broken still hurt deeply, and he wasn't ready to pretend everything was normal. His decision wasn't out of anger, but out of the need to protect the peace of the home. Joanne, who had tried to remain patient throughout everything, spoke next. She said she didn't want Emily abandoned, but she also didn't want the family to be used again. She suggested that they help Emily get therapy so she could understand her behavior and heal from whatever led her down that path. She also offered to help her find a job so she could stand on her own feet. But she made it clear that Emily couldn't stay in the house. Support didn't mean giving her the chance to repeat the same mistakes. Lily, who had been quiet until then, finally shared her thoughts. She said that helping Emily was the right thing to do, but it had to come with boundaries. She explained that Emily needed a fresh start, somewhere she could learn independence without expecting money or comfort from the family. If Emily truly wanted to change, she had to begin from zero and build her life step by step. The words stung, but Emily listened. For the first time, she didn't argue or make excuses. She didn't try to manipulate the situation or ask for special treatment. She simply nodded, understanding that she no longer had the option to choose what she wanted. Her actions had consequences, and now she had to face them. She agreed to the plan, even though her voice trembled. She knew she couldn't force herself back into their lives the way she hoped. The decision was final, and the room slowly relaxed, though the sadness lingered. The family cared about her, but caring didn't mean ignoring the pain she caused. They were offering her a chance to rebuild, but not at the cost of their own peace. Emily wiped her tears and took a deep breath, realizing that this might be the beginning of a difficult journey, but also the only path left for her to truly change. Emily stepped into her new job on a quiet Monday morning. It wasn't glamorous, and it definitely wasn't what she imagined for herself, but it was the only thing she could get. She worked long hours, standing most of the day, doing tasks she never thought she would ever have to do. The pay was small, but for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to work for every single rupee. There were days she came home exhausted, her feet aching, but she didn't complain. She knew she had to face the consequences of her choices. Every week, she attended therapy. At first, she sat silently, unsure of what to say. But slowly, she opened up. She began to see how her obsession with money had taken over her mind, how she had convinced herself that wealth mattered more than people, more than family, more than trust. It wasn't easy for her to admit any of this, but each session helped her understand herself a little better. She realized she had been chasing something that never gave her peace. With whatever she earned, she tried to repay the money she had taken from the family. It wasn't a lot, but she gave what she could. Sometimes it was just a small amount tucked into an envelope, left quietly without expecting praise. She wasn't trying to impress anyone or prove anything. She simply wanted to take responsibility for what she had done. She knew she couldn't fix the past overnight, but she hoped that her efforts would show she was trying. Back at home, the family continued to heal in their own way. Things were calmer, and the heavy tension that once filled the house had slowly begun to fade. However, the scars were still there. Trust didn't return quickly. Her father still hesitated before speaking about her, and Joanne kept a thoughtful distance, watching from afar but hoping for the best. Lily tried to stay positive, reminding everyone that healing took time. They all cared about Emily, but they were cautious, careful not to let old patterns return. Despite the distance, they noticed the small changes in her. She didn't lie, she didn't make excuses, and she didn't ask for anything. She worked, learned, and took each day as it came. The family appreciated the effort, even if they didn't say it out loud. They understood that rebuilding trust wasn't about big gestures, it was about consistency, responsibility, and sincerity. Emily's life was harder now, but for the first time it felt real. She was learning what it meant to grow, to accept mistakes, and to carry on without shortcuts. And even though the road ahead was long, she kept moving forward, hoping one day the family would see her not as the girl who broke their trust, but as someone who fought to change and start again. Months passed, and Emily's life slowly began to settle into a new routine. She had a small apartment, a steady job, and therapy sessions that helped her face the mistakes she had made. One evening, she came to the house, not to ask for money or favors, but to speak from her heart. She sat down with Mom, Dad, and me, and for the first time, her words weren't excuses. She looked at each of us and said she was truly sorry. She admitted that she lost everything because she put money above love, above family, above the people who had always been there for her. There was no defensiveness, no blaming, just a raw, honest apology. I listened carefully. I could feel the weight of her words, and I knew this apology was different from the ones she had given before. I forgave her, but I made it clear that forgiveness didn't mean trust returned automatically. She would have to show through her actions that she had truly changed. Trust, I explained, isn't rebuilt with words, it comes from consistent choices, day after day. I wanted her to understand that rebuilding our family would take time, effort, and patience. My parents were quiet for a moment. Dad's face softened slightly as he saw the genuine change in Emily. He didn't rush to hug her or forgive instantly, but the walls around his heart started to shift. Slowly, he began to speak to her again, testing if her actions matched her words. Mom, as always, remained the gentle bridge, encouraging small steps and celebrating tiny victories. The family began to feel a cautious hope, a sense that even after betrayal, something could grow again. Emily, too, was different now. She no longer chased luxuries or shortcuts. She worked hard, accepted responsibility, and faced the consequences of her choices. Every time she returned money to the family, every time she completed a therapy assignment, every time she kept her promises, she proved that change was possible. She had learned the hard way that a life built on greed can collapse in an instant, and that no amount of money can replace love, respect, or trust. As I watched her take these steps, I realized something important. Betrayal can break families, but accountability and effort can slowly rebuild them. It doesn't happen overnight, and scars will remain, but healing is possible if the people involved are willing to face the truth and make amends. Life doesn't give easy lessons, but it teaches the most powerful ones through experience. And so, I share this story with everyone who listens. Money can blind you, but karma sees everything. Choices matter. Actions speak louder than words. Betrayal can shatter lives, but if people are willing to face their mistakes, take responsibility, and work to make things right, families can survive. Step by step, day by day, even the deepest wounds can begin to heal. Our story isn't perfect, but it's real, and it proves that love, honesty, and accountability can slowly rebuild what was once broken.